Our GoToWebinar panel is exactly the same as it always is. If this is your first Power Hour with us, welcome. I'm especially happy that you are here. If you find that the GoToWebinar panel is getting in your way, you can click on that orange arrow to minimize it and get it out of your way. If you have any questions at any point during the webinar, you are muted. However, you can ask questions in the GoToWebinar panel there. I will see those questions and answer them all at the end, but don't feel like you need to hold your questions for the end. Go ahead and type them in as they come up. Just make sure you expand that GoToWebinar panel if you have a question so you can see it, and then you can re-minimize it when you're ready. Today, we're specifically going to be talking about how we format our text when it comes to things like font formatting, also known as character formatting, paragraph formatting, how to use the Format Painter tool and some little known tips and tricks with it, stripping formatting off a text, using tabs and indents to get our text to start and line up where we need it to, and then applying automatic paragraph numbering and bullets to our paragraphs. To download today's exercise to follow along, you'll want to go to tinyurl.com/AI word formatting. That's also available in the chat window so that if we get past the slide and you still need to download it, you can access it there. And with future Power Hours, you have the ability to download that as soon as you log in. So feel free to join us a couple minutes early and get those exercises downloaded before we get started going forward. As always, I want to kick things off today with a poll, so let me get that started. As I typically do, I'd love to know how you would describe your expertise when it comes to formatting text in Microsoft Word. Is it something you could do but you couldn't teach it? Do you feel like you muddle through it, or are you just here because you're excited to learn? I'll leave that up for just a minute before we dive into our materials. All right. Thanks for those responses. I'm going to switch us over to Microsoft Word now and get into our training. First thing you want to know whenever you're working with formatting in Microsoft Word is that you want to turn on your formatting marks. To do so, you want to come up here to the Home ribbon, come over to the Paragraph group, and click on the Paragraph Mark button. This is going to turn on the Show Hide Formatting Marks. You'll see when it is enabled, I get paragraph marks at the end of every single paragraph. If I zoom in for my spaces, I get little dots there. Might even have these bent arrows. Those are line breaks down here between the Article 1 and the organization. Those are what give me a good idea of exactly what's going on with the formatting in my document, especially when it comes to paragraph formatting, to know why the document's behaving the way that it is and to give me better leverage for manipulating it. We're going to start by talking about font formatting, which is also known as character formatting. There's 3 different levels of formatting that Microsoft Word understands. The first is font or character formatting. These are formatting attributes that can be applied to a single character or multiple characters in your document. These are found on the Home ribbon in the Font group, with further options available in the font dialog, which can be accessed by the launcher in the bottom right-hand corner of the font group. That little arrow down there is called a launcher. You can also get to it by right-clicking and going to font. So we can select text and apply these character or font formatting attributes to them. So things like, what font is it? Is it Calibri? Is it Times New Roman? Is it Arial? Is it 12 point? Is it 18 point? Is it 2 point? Is it black? Is it red? Is it bold? Is it underlined? Things like that. We select the text and then we apply the formatting. Next level of formatting is paragraph formatting, which we're also going to be talking about today. Paragraph formatting applies to an entire paragraph. So I can make things left aligned, full justified, centered, double spaced, single spaced, and that has to apply to at least one paragraph. As a result, when I'm applying paragraph formatting, I don't have to have the whole paragraph selected. I only have to be clicked in the paragraph for it to apply, because it's going to automatically apply it to the whole paragraph. If any of you ever used WordPerfect, you know that you could change things in the middle of a paragraph. Word doesn't work that way. Paragraph formatting applies to entire paragraphs. It's available on the Home ribbon our settings in our paragraph group right here, with further settings also available from the launcher here, or by right-clicking and going to paragraph. The third level of formatting, which we're not talking about today, is section formatting, also known as page formatting. That's information that applies to an entire section of a document. If you're not real familiar with sections, think of it as applying to entire pages of a document. We're going to have a whole separate class on that, but that's things like your page orientation, your paper size, your margins, things like that. We're going to have a whole separate class on that, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be a great class, but we just can't cover that all in 1 hour. So we are going to start with font formatting. And one thing I want to show you when it comes to font formatting is that we've got a really good quick reference guide for you. I'm not going to cover all of this in detail, but all of our attendees here will be getting a copy of this quick reference guide. And it's got things such as you want to apply bold to some text. You can click the B on the ribbon. You can use Control B. You can open up your font dialog box by Control D. You can select and right-click and go to your font properties, or if you've got your menu toolbar selected, bold is available on that. And it gives us all of those different options for a whole bunch of different things that we typically do with font formatting. I'm not going to bore you by going through all of those today, but you'll see that you've got really great references available there to reference after this GoToWebinar. So font formatting. If I want to change the font of some text, I can select it. I can come up here. I can change that font right here to Times New Roman. I can make it 12 point. I can make it bold. I can make it underlined. I can change the color, any of that. I'm just gonna hit Control Z on my keyboard to undo that. So we've got a whole bunch of different options there. Just remember, font formatting, you have to select the characters that you want the font formatting changes to apply to. Paragraph formatting, I just have to click in the paragraph. I can do things such as change the alignment from left to centered to right aligned to full justified. Full justified is when it comes from the left margin over here all the way over to the right margin. It lines up nice and tightly on both sides, whereas left alignment gives me a jagged edge over here on the right. I can change my paragraph spacing. So if I make my paragraph spacing double spaced, come up here to the home ribbon paragraph group, this drop down right here, and I switch 2.0, which is double spacing, that is going to switch my line spacing to double spaced. In between every single line, I'm going to get a blank line of space. After this line, after this line, after this line. Alternatively, I can use paragraph spacing. So if I select this, come back up here and switch this to single spaced, I can set up space after the paragraph. Easiest way to do that, I think, is to come to the home ribbon paragraph group and click on that launcher, that arrow in the bottom right-hand corner. When I click on that, you'll see that it brings up my paragraph dialog box. And down here, I have got a spacing option. If both of these are set to 0, I'm going to get all of my paragraphs stacked up together with no space in between them. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's fine. I just come here and I hit return again. But that's a little repetitive. Whenever we have to hit return twice, we're not letting Microsoft Word do the work for us. And it's really easy to accidentally end up with 2 lines between paragraphs, blank paragraph at the top of a page, and then you go to delete it, then you're missing it after you make some changes. So let Word take care of that for you. I'm gonna come back up here to my paragraph launcher to get in those settings. And of course, you could also right click and go to paragraph. Both will get you there. And I'm going to set this to 12 point after. 12 points is a full blank line. When I click OK, that automatically gives me that blank space right here. If I hit return at the end of this paragraph and start typing, I automatically get another blank line after this next paragraph. So it takes care of all of that for me, which is fantastic. So paragraph spacing is whether we have space before or after the paragraph, and line spacing is whether we have spacing between the lines. We have several types of indents in Microsoft Word. Easiest way to set those up is either in our paragraph settings, so home ribbon, paragraph group, launcher, that little arrow down here in the bottom right-hand corner that we've been talking about, or right-click and go to paragraph. And we've got a whole indents section here. We can set up our left indent. And if I set that up to be 1 inch, it's going to automatically, if you look at this little preview down here, move everything over to the left 1 inch. If I click OK, you'll see that this moved this over 1 inch. And if you have your ruler enabled, you'll see something up here. Now, if you don't have your ruler enabled, come up here to the View ribbon. And here in the Show group, there's a checkbox for ruler. Go ahead and check that. You should only have to check it once. It should stick going forward, but for some reason with new versions of Microsoft Word, the ruler's not showing by default. And I really like to see what's going on with my ruler with my indents. It gives me great visual there. All right, so I've got my ruler showing. I can see here that my left indent, these triangles here, are set up at 1 inch. I can come back into my paragraph launcher, home ribbon, paragraph group, this arrow right here in the bottom right-hand corner, and I can set up a right indent as well. If I set that up to 1 and I click OK, this now is indented from the right margin an additional inch. And we can see that right here on the ruler with this little arrow. I can alternatively come up to the ruler and drag and drop these. And they do a pretty good job of snapping into place. So if I actually don't want those indents, I can put those in right there, drag them back out to the margins, which is right where that gray meets the white up here. And we'll see if we go back into my paragraph settings here. Those are set to 0 and 0. But a lot of times what we don't want is a left indent or a right indent. We want something like a first line indent. We want the first line of each paragraph to be indented 0.5 inches. That's available here under Special. First line indent is automatically going to default to 0.5. So as long as you want a full tab stop there, a whole 1/2 inch, leave that as is. If you want something more like 0.25, go ahead and change that right there. Click OK, and that automatically gives me a first line indent. I hit return, I start typing my next paragraph, and it's automatically got that indent there, which is fantastic. We can see this up here on the ribbon. The top triangle up here, upside down triangle, if you think of most triangles as being flat on the bottom with the point on the top, has moved over 1/2 inch. And this other bottom triangle here is still over on the margin. This top one says this is where to start the paragraph and then have it flow back over here. I can adjust this by dragging and dropping as well. So if I drag and drop this back, maybe I wanted it 0.25, it'll move that back. Or I can move this over here, and adjust it really easy there. But sometimes I think it's a little bit easier to work from our paragraph settings because I can see exactly what the inches are and tell it precisely what I want. I don't have to worry about my drag and drop ability, which is sometimes suspect at best. Our other alternative under Special is a hanging indent. This is used most often when we have bullet points or numbering. If I leave the hanging indent at 0.5 and I click OK, you'll see that my first line starts over 0.5 inches to the left. The first line is starting right here on the margin and the rest ends up 0.5 over. So in this case, if I had numbered this 1 and click Tab, it's going to automatically line that all up. Now I've got some of my Word options set up in less than ideal way where it's automatically changing some formatting for me. If you attended our first Power Hour on Microsoft Word on changing those settings and you changed the ones I recommended, it would not be doing that on you. However, I have most of mine set to Word's defaults for training purposes. So hopefully you attended that class and you're not dealing with that anymore. If not, you can look that up in our Word manual. I've got some great help there on how to undo that. But as you can see, I've got a hanging indent here because I want my 1 over in the margin in the ones part of the first line, and I just follow my one by a tab. Now, before we finish up today, we're going to be talking about automatic paragraph numbering, so we're not actually going to be coming in and typing a one like this, but that is what a hanging indent is set up to do. So what happens if we delete a paragraph mark? Now that we know what's going on with our paragraphs and we know that we can only have one set of paragraph formatting apply to a paragraph. It's either double spaced or it's not. It either has 12 point after or it's not. It's either centered or it's not. We can't have it be both left aligned as it is here and centered as it is here. So if I come in and I select this paragraph mark and I delete it, what happens is that the paragraph formatting from the top paragraph rules. So if I delete that paragraph mark and then the line break that was in there, this is now left aligned. It's not centered anymore. If I undo that, we'll see here that this was centered and it's no longer centered. So we've changed all of those paragraph settings for the bottom paragraph and we've incorporated it into the paragraph above it. Now you'll see when I did that, some of the font settings changed as well. This is no longer bold and underlined, and that has to do with styles. And we're not going to be talking about styles in this class. That's a whole other class. There's a whole lot of great content I have on styles, but there's just not enough time to cover styles today. And because we are using styles, which are one of Word's most powerful features, if you hate styles, you definitely want to come back for that power hour because I promise you, you definitely want to learn to harness the power of styles. They're going to make your life so much easier. But that's why that's changing there, is to make it all conform with the style of the top one. But you'll see that paragraph mark, you delete it, the top paragraph's formatting wins. Some tools to help us with all of this, because you know what happens sometimes is we feel pretty good. We're working in a document and we know how to set the font. We know we want Times New Roman 12 point, not a problem. We know how to do that. We know how to make it left aligned. We know how to make it full justified. We feel pretty good about all of that. But sometimes we get some funky stuff in our document. So most of this document is Calibri, but I copied and pasted a paragraph in here and it's Times New Roman. Now, what I could do is select it, come up here, switch this on our font group to Calibri. But maybe I want to strip all the font formatting off. I'm not really sure what else is going on here, but it's just not quite right. There's a keyboard shortcut to strip that all off. If I hold down the Control key and I hit the space bar, it's going to strip all font formatting attributes and take it down to what the defaults are for the document, or if I'm using styles, what the style settings are. So that will strip all of that off for me. If I want to strip paragraph formatting, so I've got another funky paragraph here. It's at least in Calibri 11, but oh, it's centered and oh, it just doesn't look quite right. If I hit Control Q, it's going to automatically strip off that funky paragraph formatting. I'm controlling how these paragraphs are supposed to be set up with styles, and so that style says that this should have a first line indent and 12 point after, and that's why it strips that all off. But you'll see it's leaving the italics and the bold because I was only stripping the paragraph formatting, and italics and bold are font specific formatting attributes. If I hit Control Spacebar, it then strips off the italics and the bold. I can do those two separately. If you want to strip font and paragraph formatting at the same time, so down here I've got a paragraph. It's a book Antiqua. Ooh, where'd that font come from? It's got some bold in it and it does not have the right paragraph formatting at all. If I come up here to the Home ribbon, and in the font group, there's this little eraser button. It is the strip all formatting button. If you hover over it, it might say clear all formatting. If I click on it, it's going to strip off all font and paragraph formatting. And if you're using styles, it's also going to strip off any styles that have been applied, taking it down to your default style, which is called your normal style. So you're going to get rid of any funky formatting you have. So if you've ever got a paragraph that's just not cooperating, it's just not doing what you need, you can use this button up here to take it back to just the text and reformat it from scratch, which sometimes when things just aren't cooperating, that's the easiest answer because it's got a whole bunch of funky settings going on there. And you could go look at your advanced font settings, your advanced paragraph settings, and some other things, but it's just easier to strip it down and apply the formatting that you need. And if you already have the formatting you need set up in your document, you can easily use the Format Painter to take it from where you have it set up right to where you need it. The Format Painter is a really cool tool. If you haven't used it before, you definitely want to learn to use it. What you do to use it is you select the text that is formatted the way you want. So if I like this paragraph up here, it's got my first line indent, my 12-point after, it's justified. What I can do is come up here to the Home ribbon in the Clipboard group and click on the Format Painter button. When I click on it, it's going to absorb all the formatting in that paragraph and font formatting both. So if there was any special font formatting where I had put my cursor, it would absorb that. And then all I need to do is for paragraph formatting, click on the paragraph down here, and it applies that formatting. And I can repeat this as necessary. So if I need duration down here to match the formatting of name up here, I can click up here, Format Painter, click on duration. And it even gave me my automatic numbering, which is really cool. Now, if I had just manually typed 1.2 in a tab here, that would not automatically come over. So setting up our automatic numbering is really important. Then I can click up here, click on Format Painter, and I can even select multiple paragraphs if I would like. Select them all, it paints them all. And once I've got that paint applied, I realize, oh, this probably should have been formatted more like duration. This probably should be 2.2. If I realize I'm going to have a lot of those and they're maybe not contiguous, what I can do, click on the formatting I like, come back up to the Format Painter button, double click on it, and that's going to keep it applied. So now I can continue to click and apply that formatting because I double clicked up here. And you'll see that this allows me to apply it to a whole host of places. To stop applying, just click on the Format Painter once, and that will toggle that back off. All right, books, records, and accounting probably needs to match Article 2. Click up here, click on the Format Painter, click down here, that'll apply. All right, come back up here, double click the Format Painter, click on all of these paragraphs here, make sure I've got all of them set up the way I need. And you'll see that it's really easy to get formatting from one place to another once you have it set up right. So it's well worth your time to set up a couple of paragraphs correctly to begin with. Go ahead, get that 12-point after. Even if it seems like a lot of extra work now, it's going to save you work because you can use the Format Painter. And if you're already using styles or you're excited about the idea of coming back for our styles power hour and learning about it, it actually will apply styles for you with the Format Painter. So this is going to be a really handy tool to have in your back pocket when we get to the styles point. And you'll see here, one of the things we need to do is enter a line break here. After our Article 3, it automatically numbered it, but that line break needs to be manually typed. If you're not familiar with line breaks and you want to know how to do those, it is Shift Return. That will give you a line break. What a line break does is tell Word that this is all one paragraph, but inside the paragraph, I need to start over on a new line. So I can have this paragraph automatically numbered with that Article 3, and then I can have the books, records, and accounting start over on its own line, but Word still sees it as the same paragraph. If I try to hit a return here, it's going to give me a blank Article 3, and then it's going to name Books, Records, and Accounting Article 4. Line break solves that problem. Some of our more advanced paragraph settings that I really think are underutilized are what I call glue. If I come into my paragraph settings, home ribbon, paragraph group, launcher, arrow right here in the bottom right hand corner, or I right click and I go to paragraph. If we switch from the indents and spacing tab at the top to line and page breaks over here, we've got some more advanced options here that really are underutilized, especially the keep with next and the keep lines together. These two features I call glue. Keep with next says take this paragraph and keep it on the same page with the next paragraph so we don't get a natural page break between the two. Keep lines together says don't let a natural page break occur in the middle of this paragraph. So places where I frequently want to use those are things like signature blocks. So these all look okay here. They're all falling on the same page, but I've got a natural page break falling in the middle of Paul Unger's signature block. And I'd really prefer to have his entire signature block on the same page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these paragraphs here, except for the last one, the one with his email address, because I'm going to say, Word, keep these paragraphs with the next paragraph. Now, this email address doesn't need to be on the same page as the next paragraph. Therefore, we don't need to apply it to that. So I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to go into my paragraph settings, either that launcher on the ribbon or right click and go to paragraph. And I am going to check the keep with next button. And when I do that and I click OK, it moves that all down to the same page. And you'll see over here in the left-hand margin, it gives me little boxes. And what those boxes mean is that on that tab, if I go back over to my paragraph settings, on this line and page breaks tab, I checked something that is not normally checked. So it's a little visual indication oftentimes that I've got some glue here. And the reason why this is really important is because it's easy once you start getting excited about glue to accidentally glue too much together. And if you glue the body of your document together, you've got maybe 10 paragraphs of 5 or more lines each, and you glue those all together. And you say they all need to be on the same page accidentally. Word gets really confused and it starts inserting random page breaks in the middle of your document because not all 50 lines can fall on one page. So if you start using these glue features and you're getting some real weird page breaks, make sure you turn on your formatting marks because without these on, I can't see it. So home ribbon, paragraph group, paragraph marks right here. That way you can see maybe you've accidentally glued, all 5 pages of content together and Word's just having troubles figuring out what you intended. So that's why when you're formatting, one of the reasons why it's really important to have your formatting marks turned on. All right. Sometimes we want to do the opposite. We want to keep lines together. I don't need bankruptcy here to be on the same page as affiliate. But maybe I don't want there to be this natural page break in the middle of bankruptcy. I really want the whole definition on one page. I'm going to go back into my paragraph settings, home ribbon, paragraph group, paragraph launcher, or right click and go to paragraph. And this time I'm going to use keep lines together. I'm going to click OK, and that moves that all down now. And it's not because this paragraph here falls on this page, it's because it's not going to allow me to have a natural page break in the middle of this paragraph here. Most often, I use these settings in signature blocks and titles. So if I scroll back up here to my article titles, you'll see that they have that box over here in the left-hand margin because I would never want to end a page with an article. I always want the article to fall on the following page. Or same thing with this. I want a natural page break to fall between books and records and the text following it. So that keeps all of this on the same page. So I use glue, signature blocks, and titles most often if they don't fall in the same paragraph as the rest of the paragraph. If they're on their own line and I don't want them to fall at the bottom of the page by themselves, that's primarily when I use glue. And a lot of times I use keep lines together for that as well, so that if some of my article titles or other titles get a little lengthy, maybe I am doing litigation and I have got some legal arguments as section dividers in my brief or my motion or my memorandum. I want to keep that all on the same page. I use keep lines together with that, but you can also use it for things like definition sections. All right. Automatic paragraph numbering and bullets. This is a big one. Let's say I decided that I didn't like this all in one paragraph, and I decided that I wanted to break this out into sub paragraphs. So I want to be able to say 1, 2, 3, all on their own line. Okay, and this right here is just referring to the ones up there. So I'm going to hit return here. And we'll see it's automatically applying some formatting for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and format that as normal. We'll be talking more about those styles in that style class. What I want to do is set up some numbering here. And I always want to use my multi-level list numbering button. So if I come up here to the home ribbon in the paragraph group, there is a bullets option, a single level numbering list, and a multi-level numbering list. And the reason why I always want to use the multi-level numbering list, even if I only want one level of numbering, is the single level really backs me into a corner and I can't really add another level to it. So, maybe we're drafting this document, I think I only need one level, but we're going through some series of edits and someone's like, oh, I really need some subpoints here. I can't add those in and have them be part of the same list if I've picked the single level list. And I can add bullets as part of my numbering scheme if I do a multi-level one. So don't be afraid to do that even if you think you need bullets. So I'm going to come up here, multi-level, come down, and I'm going to go to a new multi-level list. When I click on that, it's going to give me 9 levels. If I don't need 9 levels, I don't have to set them all up. To change which level I'm setting up, I click up here. So by default, I'm going to set up level 1 to begin with. If I want this to be a Romanette like it was before, I'm going to change this drop down here for the number style for this level to be a Romanette. If I want it to be in parentheses, I type my parentheses around it up here. I don't want to type my Romanette up here because then I'm going to get a little I for every single thing in the list rather than little I, little 2, little 3, so on and so forth. Down here, number alignment, the vast majority of time we want to leave this at left, even if our numbering scheme is going to be centered, so don't worry about that. Our alignment, how far over from the left margin do I want to align my number? So in this case, I probably want my number aligned at 0.5, so it shows up right here under affiliate. So I'm going to type 0.5 there, and then my text indent. How far over from the margin is the text going to appear? I'm probably going to want to do 1 inch here so that the text is over right here because we've got a 1/2 inch here. If I click OK, I now have a little I here, followed by a tab, and then this all lines up just so. Then I can go use my format painter to format these others with that numbering. So I've got a whole bunch of formatting applied very quickly here. If I hit return here and I want to type a new item, automatically numbers that to 2 and renumbers everything else. I delete that. It fixes that. A lot of people feel pretty comfortable with this, but where they run into trouble is if they realize they don't like the indents they initially set up. To get back into my list and edit it, easiest way is to right click on my number and go to adjust list indents. That will get me back into this dialog and I can adjust those. I can adjust the indents or I could say, oh, I actually want this to be a bullet point. And under number style, I get bullet point options. Got our circle here, pretty standard alternative, click OK, and now I've got bullet points there. So whenever you want to adjust your numbering scheme, right click, go to adjust list indents. You can also add a second level here. So if I want that to be a little a in parentheses here, maybe I want that over at 1 inch and 1.5. I click OK, come here, Hit tab moves you over. Shift tab moves you back out. So tab to go down one level, shift tab to go up one level. And you'll see that it allows you to automatically renumber things on all of the different levels. So automatic paragraph numbering and bullets are really important. If you come back for our styles power hour later this year, we'll talk about how to tie these two styles, which really makes styles even more powerful. All right, let's talk about tabs, because tabs can do so much more than the average person's aware of in Microsoft Word. So tabs can be used to set a location at which when you hit the tab key, it automatically moves the cursor over that bar. By default, you hit the tab key, it moves you over 0.5 unless you tell it otherwise. But there's also tabs that we can set up where we can center text under it. We can right align text under it. We can do what's called a bar tab, which is easiest seen, not explained. So I'll show you that, in a decimal tab where it lines things up along a decimal point. So I had said that paragraph formatting included things like left alignment, centering, right alignment, full justification, and that a paragraph could only be one of those things. Tabs allow you to change that. A lot of times this is used for information such as hospital bills, like I'm going to show you. You can also use it in headers or footers so that you can have content that's left aligned, centered, and right aligned all on the same line in your footer or in your letterhead on your header. We use tabs to do that. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select this text that I want to get set up with tabs. I'm going to go to my paragraph settings. So I'm going to right click and go to paragraph. You could also go to the home ribbon launcher in the paragraph group. And I am going to click on the tabs button down here in the bottom left hand corner. When I click on that, it's going to bring up my tabs dialog, and it's going to ask me for my tab stop positions. I've got notes over here telling me exactly where I want them. So I'm going to do 0.13. I'm going to make it a left align tab, and I'm going to click set. Then up here at the top, 2.25, alignment center, click set. Tab stop position, 5.5, alignment right, click set. If you click set, it won't actually add it to the list, and you'll just be not doing anything other than deleting your own work. Tab stop position, 6.0. That's going to be a bar tab, set. All right, and then finally 7.0, decimal, set. So you should have 5 tabs set up here. 0.13 is a left aligned, 2.25 is center, 5.5 is right, 6 is bar, 7 is decimal. When I click OK, because I already had tabs in here, these arrows are tabs, it automatically says, okay, after the first tab, all the text is going to be left aligned. So at 0.13, this is all left aligned. Then at 2.25, we're going to center everything under it. So these are all centered at 2.25. These here are all right aligned at 5.5. A bar tab simply drops a bar down the paragraph there, which is really kind of nice. If I turn off my paragraph marks, you can see how nice that looks. That looks pretty nice here. And then the amount lines everything up along the decimal point. If I delete my zeros there, it's still all aligned along the decimal point. If I type 1, which is a little bit narrower, it all lines up just fine. So decimal tabs can be really great for lining up numbers because most people visually like to see those decimals lined up. So this gets you around some of those rules that you can only have specific types of formatting in one paragraph. Oftentimes used in content like this, headers and footers, where we want things to all appear on one page. All right, we've got some time left for questions, but before we start taking questions, I want to give you guys one more poll. So I want to know, did you all learn something that will make your job easier? I'm really hoping that you are taking away more than one thing that's going to make your job easier, but I would love to know if your life's going to be a little bit better going forward because of things that you learned here. I'm going to start looking through the questions while you guys answer that, and then we will start tackling those. All right, looks like we've got some good poll responses there, so thank you all for responding. All right, first question. What is the best way to change the font for the whole document? All right, so we didn't talk about this. We talked about how to change our fonts, but not if you need to change it for the whole document. So what most people do when they go to change their font for the whole document is they select the entire document. So they either take their cursor and they click and they drag, or they hit Control A, which selects the whole document, and they come up here and they say, okay, I'm going to change the font right here on the home ribbon. I'm going to make it Times New Roman. But what happens when you do that is that Microsoft Word has a default font. Even if you don't know it has a default font, it has a default font. And Word assumes that you intentionally set the default font to something that you want. So as you continue to type in your document, you copy and you paste, Word says, ooh, I know what you want, I know what you want, I want the default font. And so it keeps having the default font pop up. And that default font isn't necessarily what you want it to be. So whenever you want to change the font for an entire document, the first thing you want to do is set the default font for that document to that font. To do that, we're going to go into our advanced font settings. So right click, and when you right click, make sure you are clicked in an area that doesn't have bold, italics, underline, any of that applied. So right click and go to font, or up here on the home ribbon, go to your font launcher, that arrow in the bottom right hand corner, click on that and set the font to what you want. So if you want Times New Roman 12 point, pick Times New Roman, keep this on regular 12, otherwise you're going to end up with your default font being bold or italics or underlined, which most people don't want as their default font. They want to apply that selectively. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, come down here, click Set as Default. This document only is correct. Click OK. And most of this document automatically switches to Times New Roman 12 point. Up here switched, a lot of this down here switched. You'll see I was dragging and dropping some things around when I was screwing around earlier, so these articles are no longer perfectly centered. You can see here, hey, because we got the ruler showing that those aren't quite where we need them to be, but that's because I was fooling around with some stuff later on that has nothing to do with having set the default font. But this right here has a whole bunch of what we call direct formatting applied over it, where this wasn't originally the default font anyways. If I hit Control Spacebar, that will take it back to the default font. Now, I also lost my bold and my italics, so we've got that problem there, but Control Spacebar will take that back. I could then, of course, alternatively come up here and select that to be Times New Roman. So while I want to make sure that my default font is set up correctly, and the vast majority of the time it will change the font in the entire document, depending on how many people have touched it, how many different times they've changed the font, different things that are going on. Maybe there's some styles applied that aren't based on that. We can run into some issues, which is one of the reasons why I talk about stripping off formatting. If you strip formatting here, Control Spacebar, that fixes a lot of it. Control Q, that gets our paragraph settings reapplied. Of course, we have to, fix individual words manually, but that helps get rid of a lot of the layers of formatting that have been applied to the text. Oh, excellent question. Is there a shortcut for keep with next? So I think the fastest and easiest way to apply keep with next is to add it to your quick access toolbar. If you're not familiar with your quick access toolbar, it's up here in the upper left-hand corner. Now, I always recommend showing it below the ribbon. So click on this drop-down arrow right here, come to show below the ribbon, and that'll show up down here. It's in color. I think it's a lot easier to see, less far for my mouse to travel. Then come back down to this drop-down arrow and go to More Commands. Now, of course, you can keep it at the top and still go to More Commands, but I strongly prefer it at the bottom. Then here, under Choose Commands From, we want to go to Commands Not in the Ribbon, because that Keep With Next is not in the ribbon. I got to get into that paragraph dialog to get there. Click on Commands Not in the Ribbon, wait for this to change, and then we are going to go down to our paragraph setting. So if you type a P, it'll take you down here. And then we'll go to Para Keep With Next. There's a check mark. I'm going to click Add here. That will add it over here. and then I'm going to click OK. And now if I want to tell any one paragraph to keep with next, I just have to check this box here. And you can see things like name already have that checked. So if you are working with documents where sometimes some of it needs to be kept with next, sometimes it doesn't, so you don't apply that in the style, which we're going to be talking about later this year, you can use that. Or if you're not using styles because you're not there yet and you're anxiously waiting our power hour on that, you can tell it to keep with next right here. And I think that's really helpful to have it there because going into your paragraph settings here, coming over to line and page breaks is a lot of clicks. It's going to reduce your number of clicks. And even if you don't have your formatting marks on, you can still see that keep with next has been applied here, even though I don't have the formatting marks turned on. All right. Oh, another great question. What is better, space before or after a paragraph? All right, so I only talked about spacing after a paragraph. I didn't talk about spacing before, but if I right click and I go into my paragraph settings, indents and spacing, there's also an option for 12-point space before. If I add 12 point here, you'll see that this now has 12 point between the paragraph above it and the paragraph. I prefer 12-point space after, because if you use the spacing before and your paragraph starts at the top of a page, if you get a natural page break before it, you're going to end up with a blank line at the top of your page. And if you don't have anything in your header, it's probably not noticeable. But if you have anything in your header, especially, if you're writing a letter and you've got, maybe some client information up there, or if you have a line across the top from your header, it becomes fairly obvious there's a blank line there, and I don't think it looks as great. Whereas space before isn't going to create any problems there. In fact, if there's not room for that blank space at the bottom of the page, it will just ignore it. But Word is definitely designed for space before. There's even a keyboard shortcut for space before, and that's the Control U. So you see, I'm hitting Control U on my keyboard, and it's automatically adding and removing a full line for space before, which is really nice that we have that option. But because it can give you a blank line at the top of a page, I'm not a big fan of space before. All right, should a signature block be set up with tabs or indents? Great question. I actually recommend using both. So let me scroll down to our signature blocks and turn my formatting marks back on. So I like to use indents to start the line. So right here, I have got an indent set up where the line is. So that way, if perhaps Jennifer McBeal had a much longer name, maybe she hyphenates it all over the place. And then maybe we went vice president on the same line. So I'll come over here and I'll type vice president. What happens is I ran out of space here. And if I had not used an indent, it would have shot it all the way back over to the left margin. And I don't want that. So that lined it up here nicely. But what I do use a tab for is the line itself. So I set up a tab right here on the margin, and then I underline my tab. So if I were to set up a new one of these, I would underline. So home ribbon, underline button, and then I hit tab and I get an underline tab. And what this ensures is that every single signature line ends up in exactly the same place. If I'm using underscores, it's really easy to accidentally be off by one or two. And if you're working in any type of document that maybe you could have a control or a /s signature. Depends what jurisdiction you're in, but some courts accept signatures like this. You'll see that as I typed my name, this didn't move at all over to the right. Now, if my name, were to take up the whole line, we'd run into problems, but that kept it all with the exact same width. And when I add that here, the line is contiguous. If I had just underlined my name and not used a tab here and used underscores, if I zoom in far enough, you can see there's actually a break right here. They're not one solid line. So if you ever need to type on a signature line, you definitely want to use a tab, but I would use a tab always just to ensure that they are exactly the same width. But for all other aspects of your signature block, I would use indents to set those up just in case you end up with a longer name than you're anticipating. That way it doesn't shoot back over to the left margin for you. Are there any disadvantages to using the Format Painter? No, as I mentioned, Format Painter will even copy styles, which is fantastic. So the Format Painter kind of seems like a cheap cheat, right? You know, it's like, oh, I don't really know how to use Word, so I'm gonna use the Format Painter to do the work for me. But it's not cheating. It takes all of your hard work where you got your formatting set up correctly, and it carries that over for you. The Format Painter is such a powerful tool. I can't recommend it enough, and I've never run into problems with using it. So I can't recommend it enough, even if you use styles. And if you don't, please come back for our styles class because that's going to be an amazing class. Ah, so why shouldn't I hit return twice to get space after a paragraph? That's a lot easier than setting up 12 point after. So I get it. If you're not used to setting up 12 point space after, it's a lot easier to hit return twice. You're in the habit of it. Maybe even it's going to be hard to switch to only hitting the return key once at the end of every single paragraph because you're so in the habit of it. Kind of like spaces after periods, right? If you are or were ever in the two spaces after a period school of thought, it might be next to impossible to retrain yourself to only hit one space after a period. Um, but I just see problems there because you can end up with a blank line at the top of a page. So, you know, if you're here and you're hitting return twice here, this could easily end up falling to the top of the page where now I've got a blank line at the top of the page here. And then maybe I go through and I'm like, oh, okay, I delete it. I don't need it here. But then I make some edits and all of a sudden I'm missing that blank line. Things are running together. And using the tools that Microsoft Word gives you is always going to save you time in the long run, especially because once you set up that 12 point after initially, when you hit return, it's going to automatically apply it to the next paragraph. It's not like we have to go through each paragraph one at a time to apply it. All right, I don't see any more questions come in. If you guys get back to work and you've got more questions, take a look at our Microsoft Word manual. You're specifically talking about the content from chapters 21 to 24 today. I've got some great quick reference guides coming for you guys today, including that one I showed you where I've got a whole bunch of keyboard shortcuts in there for you that we just didn't have time to talk about all of them today. So watch your email for those. Those are going to be coming out shortly. For those of you who have Foxit Phantom PDF, I hope I see you in 2 weeks on March 18th. Our bonus webinar for March is going to be on Foxit Phantom PDF. So I'd love to see you there. We're going to be talking about all sorts of good tips and tricks there. And we're going to be talking about how to properly redact. So if you're not real sure about how to redact properly, I don't want you to end up in the news. I don't want anybody I know to be in the news. I want us all to be redacting properly. So that's one of the big ticket items we're going to cover to make sure everyone's comfortable with that. And regardless of whether you have Foxit or not, if you have any use for PowerPoint or you're even thinking about using PowerPoint, on March 25th, we're going to be talking about using PowerPoint effectively so that you can get the most out of your presentations and really how to keep your audience engaged. Thank you guys so much for attending today. If you have any comments, thoughts, or feedback, please reach out to us at insight@affinityconsulting.com. We're really interested in what you have to say and what could make this better. If we have any questions, we could answer for you. Thank you so much for attending. I hope to see you all in 2 or 3 weeks.